most was when we were at the Invitational in Somerset last year when he made the top 4 in Legacy with Ad Nauseam Tendrils. He wrote a report for the Leaving a Legacy column for Star City this year, and he basically said, I'm going to play Storm until I don't top 8 with it, and he has a couple so far. Duke, we've seen him play Combo Elves in the past. Now he's got to show the Reanimator hand that he's keeping.
Yeah, I believe all 3 of Reid Duke, Owen Turtelwald, and William Chenster on Reanimator for the Legacy portion this weekend.
The PGO all playing the same deck, probably within the same 74 or 75. But the Duke is going to show you a Sphinx of the Steel, Win, a Brainstorm, a Careful Study, an Entomb, a Swamp, and an Island.
Now, traditionally, Reanimator is very favored against other combo decks. It's just a little bit faster, a little bit more consistent, and plays a reasonable amount of hand disruption and light counters. Very good recipe for beating a deck like Ad Nauseam. Though Reid does not really have a Haymaker to reanimate game 1.
Yep.
His reanimation package is 4 copies of Crystal Brand, an Ashen Rider, a Sphinx of the Steel Wind, and an Ellisnorn. More of a package dedicated to beating honest decks. Not really anything great to go get against Reanimator, no Iona, nothing along those lines. And so even though this matchup is favorable for Reid, the fact that he doesn't have a great reanimation target in game 1 outside of Crystal Brand might put him at a bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, the best you can really do is get back a Crystal Brand, draw some cards, hopefully find some counter magic or some Thoughtseizes and break apart Reanimator's hand while gaining some life. But as you mentioned, there isn't a specialty creature here to knock out the Storm deck, as Rill's going to play an Underground Sea. He's at 18, now he's going to go Pondering. So a little bit of manipulation here for the Ad Nauseam Tendrils player before maybe it's time to go kaboom and get Reid Duke dead.
Yep. Good start here for Eric, though. Some cantrips to fill out his hand. He's got a lot of information to work with, too.
Hey, he cast a Gataxian Probe, so you're probably pretty happy. He cast a foil Gataxian Probe, so you're less happy?
I'm still pretty happy.
Okay.
I'll repeat this, as I've said multiple times on some broadcasts.
Oh, tell me, I've never heard this before.
A year or so from now, when we have Gataxian Probe in basically every Legacy deck, or close to it, we are going to look back at the list that we're playing 0 and laugh at them. We're going to laugh at those lists.
I agree. I do agree.
This is like looking back at standard deck lists that had 2 Jace the Mind Sculptor. we're just gonna laugh about this.
Yes. What were we doing?
Yep. What
is wrong with us?
The old Necro decks that played 3 copies of Necropotence. It's all gonna be in that.
Is that wrong?
Yeah.
Mystery cards from the Ponder for Rill. And Duke's gonna sacrifice his smart flats. Maybe cast an Entomb here. We'll see.
Yeah. And you can see kind of the reason Reanimator is so good against other combo decks. You have Thoughtseize, Daze, Force of Will, and a really fast combo.
Anything too, as actually Duke's going to cast a Brainstorm. Big question is, does Duke know what he's up against? Now, if he's familiar with Eric Rill, he knows that Rill plays, that he plays Ad Nauseam Tendrils. But if he's not, then he doesn't know that. And so it's a pretty honest play by just casting a Ponder off an Underground Sea and a Probe as well.
It's tough because, you know, if we go 2 months ago, Reid can almost put Eric on some sort of unfair strategy where it's whether it's Reanimator himself or Ad Nauseam or something along those lines, because the Gataxian Probe is a bit of a giveaway. But now that card's being incorporated even into bug decks, it's hard to know if he's playing against some sort of Abrupt Decay strategy or a combo deck himself.
Here's the other thing too. You know, I obviously cover a lot of these shows. When's the last time we really saw a Storm deck?
It's pretty rare.
It seems like it's been a couple of weeks. You know, Storm kind of comes and goes, but when it comes, it seems like it stays for a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so, and then it kind of goes away again. Haven't really seen a lot of Storm over the past month or two on the Open Series.
The thing is, I believe it's the deck in Legacy with the highest skill cap. I think it is the deck where if you are really good at piloting it, you pick up a ton of wins that people leave on the table. But it's just such a challenging deck to get that level of expertise with that I think a lot of people just don't have enough confidence in their own ability to pilot in a 9-round tournament proficiently. And correctly so. The deck's very hard to play.
Yes, it is. You see a Brainstorm here from Duke. And now it's time to go Entombing on his upkeep before he draws a card.
Doesn't have a fetch land at the ready here, so he's going to shuffle it the old-fashioned way with a spell that shuffles his deck.
Crystal Brand going to go into the graveyard here for the Duke. And we'll see what he's able to find after shuffling, as he's not trying to card just yet.
From what I got to see last round, Reid's match against Ruben was a pretty lopsided affair.
Maybe Blood Mooned him to death or anything of that nature?
Just a really fast combo game 1, and then rest in peace out of Ruben's sideboard in game 2.
Oh, he's on the White Splash this weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. Duke is going to play a Reanimate now, targeting Gristlebrand. So, see, it's easy. You just Entomb, and then you exhume or Reanimate, and then they just lose.
Yeah, and I like this play a lot from Reid going for it right now, even absent of whatever disruption he has in his hand, although he appears to have it Daze. When your opponent leads with an Underground Sea, time is very unlikely to be on your side. You're looking at other counterspells, cantrips, Thoughtseizes. Best to just go for it.
Well, Mr. Rill, you are under the gun. It's time to get to work.
Welcome to Legacy.
To turn to Griselbrand.
No big deal.
I'm not really all that impressed.
Yeah.
Here's a Gataxian probe. There's the grip. You've got a careful study, a brainstorm, an exhume, and a daze, as you did mention. Now, of course, Griselbrand hasn't activated yet, but Griselbrand only getting one activation. So Rill, given if Duke isn't able to find anything like a Force of Will, could go off this turn.
Yeah, but there's a lot of pressure for him to go off this turn, as if Reid gets to untap and connect once, that's 7 fresh cards through Griselbrand.
Yeah.
So the odds of him finding a Thoughtseize, a Force of Will, something to really lock this game up is really high. So a lot of pressure on Eric here to do something very productive this turn.
Interesting play here by Rill, casting a brainstorm into a daze. And you see Reid giving him the once-over.
Yeah.
What are you up to over there, buddy? Huh?
Looking up at the ceiling,
Yeah.
trying to figure out what this could imply.
You trying to hook me in to dazing that? I don't think so. We'll see if I daze that. He is.
And it's really dangerous to let the Ad Nauseam deck be able to brainstorm there, because they have so many ways of finding spells that make additional mana that you may not be able to daze things productively going forward.
If that's a test spell, if Brainstorm is the test spell for your deck, you have a good deck.
Yes. I can afford to throw this into the maw of your days.
We're going to sacrifice Fluted Delta, going to go down to 15. We'll see if he can get those fireworks going for a Storm deck.
Part of it just might be a lack of options.
Agreed.
If he leads with, let's say, Dark Ritual, Reid is certainly dazing that.
Yes.
So Brainstorm kind of has, or something along those lines, a Ponder, what have you. That needs to be the lead spell there. It has to be something threatening, but not something critical for him to go off.
And the tough thing, too, is, if you let Brainstorm resolve, you might be in a bad spot, too, because, hey, it's Brainstorm.
Oh, yeah.
So, Rill going to play another copy of Brainstorm.
And if you're Reid here, you're pretty happy that this is Brainstorm here, as it means Eric is almost certainly not going to be able to go off this turn, and Reid can untap, connect with Griselbrand, and have a lot more breathing room.
Yeah, that'll be, as you mentioned, access to 2 activations to Griselbrand. That means 14 cards, and chances are you'll probably find a Force of Will in there, and that might just be good enough.
Or even a discard spell.
Yeah.
Even another daze would be very helpful here.
Yeah.
Reid just needs a little something else to make sure he has enough time to finish out the game.
Eric, I'm going to put 2 cards back. You see, he's number 16 on the Open Series leaderboard. Had a really nice year last year. Also having a pretty good year so far here. There's a Brainstorm. We're just going to pass the turn back. So he's ready to take one on the chin from the old demon. So in for 7 comes the Duke. He'll go up to 18. Rill will go down to 8.
That's a tough one to take on the chin.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. So you're going to get a main phase activation here of Griselbrand from Reid.
Because it's actually a 1-2 punch. This is the second part of the punch right
Yeah,
here.
yes, it is. We're going to see if he can find himself a discard spell here. Taking a look at his deck list, he does have 2 copies of Thoughtseize. So if he does find one of those, he would want to fire that off, especially since Rill did just resolve a Brainstorm.
It appears that Reid was able to find daze, so at least one additional piece of disruption. I'm sure he would prefer Force of Will here, but anything is good.
Well, that's what the other Griselbrand activation's for. That one finds the Force of Will, probably on the 7th card down, too, just for maximum dagger value. That's normally how these things work.
Yep, absolutely.
So Reid is going to take a look at some things here. He's going to draw 7 more right now, so he's going to go down to 4. He wants to try to sculpt the perfect one, looks like. It really looks like he might just be digging for a Thoughtseize.
Yep. Although there is some risk here in Reid falling to 4, as now Tendrils of Agony becomes way more realistic to just kill him manual style.
It's just a little baby one.
He doesn't need a lot of help from here.
Now Duke. He does have a Thoughtseize. Here is an island. This is a Thoughtseize. He's going to go down to 2. Mr. Rill, may I see your hand, please?
I mean, certainly if Reid doesn't feel like he could hold off Eric with the resources afforded to him, then he needs to draw 7 more, but there's some risk here.
Eric says, I'm going to concede the game. You do not get to see. Now, this is interesting here because let's think about the cards that Reid saw that game. Brainstorm, Brainstorm, Probe, 2 Underground Seas. That's it?
Ponder.
Ponder, okay. So manipulation and a probe, 2
Yeah.
Underground Seas. Now, that doesn't, I guess, does it signal Storm or not, I guess is the question right now.
Well, it could very easily also signal a Reanimator.
Sure.
It would be a poor Reanimator draw for him to be doing that stuff instead of entombing and such. But
Sure.
Certainly Reanimator is something that still has to be on Reid's radar. Even something like Bug Control is not out of the question, based on that opening. Can you 100% discount a Stoneforge control deck? No, I mean, all these things are still in play. I think if you had to ask Reid, you get one choice. I think it's very likely that he would name Ad Nauseam, but he can't totally discount the possibility of other decks as well.
Yeah, I think it's a crafty concession there by Rill, trying to hide any information that he can. Both players are going to go to the sideboard. We are going to do the same. You've got Eric Rill's deck list in front of you, and what's he got?
2 copies of Surgical Extraction, 4 Dark Confidants, a Cabal Therapy, 2 Abrupt Decays, a Slaughter Pack, a Massacre, an Echoing Truth, a Gilded Drake, a Defense Grid, and a Caracas. I really like burying Caracas here, of course, good against all sorts of reanimation targets, especially Iona, which Eric has to be anticipating in this game. 2 copies of Surgical Extraction, of course, very good here as well. I'm curious to see if the 4 copies of Dark Confidant are coming in. I think it's normally for matchups where you're expecting to fight through a lot of disruption. But you can be pretty confident that Reid isn't flush with answers to kill a Dark Confidant, and you might be able to gain a lot of value out of it. So maybe not explicitly for this matchup, but a tool that Eric may want to go to.
Take a look at the sideboard here of the Duke. 2 City of Traders, 2 Show and Tell, 2 Jace the Mind Sculptor, 2 Massacre, 2 Pithing Needles, and then a couple of singletons in Iona, Shield of Emeria, Blazing Archon, and Duress, and then 2 Thoughtseize. Is the discard spells? Well, those are easy to bring in. 2 Thoughtseize and a Duress, assuming he knows what he's playing against, of course. The other cards you could argue about. I think Iona is a very easy swap here for a different reanimation target, probably Ashen Rider, but maybe Elishnorn, again, depending on if Reid knows what he's playing against. Show and Tell City of Traders, that's normally a 4-card package that comes in together, but I don't know if this one's really so much about show and tell, as he can just exhume and reanimate pretty confidently here, and he already has 2 show and tells in his main deck, so I don't know if he needs 2 more or any for that matter.
Yeah, the big question mark to me is, does he anticipate Eric having a lot of ways to interact with the graveyard? That's where you want show and tell the most in my mind, is when you're playing against Deathrite Shamans, Surgical Extractions, Tormod's Crypts, or you just anticipate your graveyard going through a lot of disruption in the post-board games. Reid doesn't really have any reason to anticipate there's that much, other than his opponent's playing black and therefore has access to the most powerful anti-graveyard cards. So it's possible he's going to want to go to more of them, but like you said, I don't think it's 100% that he's going to side in the 3rd and 4th copy.
Now, of course, we do want to mention you guys at home. 1, we appreciate you watching. 2, you can join in on the conversation with Patrick, Osip, and I at SCG Live, hashtag SCGINVI, all weekend long as we do make it through this 16 rounds of Swiss for this tournament. We've also got our standard Legacy Open on Saturday and Sunday, which will get Season 2 off and rolling. But Patrick, I have a very interesting question for you. You are the Gitaxian Probe Maestro. Janice_Scoveby, and if I did butcher that, I do apologize. Which part of Gitaxian Probe is the most important? Looking at the hand, the fact that it's free, the fact that it's blue, or the fact that it replaces itself?
They're all tied for first. All elements of that are tied for first. Though I will say in my experience playing with Gitaxian Probe during a Legacy Open and Invitational, that Gitaxian Probe was often so good for me that I forgot to draw a card. Just seeing their hand was so insane that I was almost forgetting to draw a card in some spots. So they're all tied for first. All of them are critical elements. If you're missing any part of that, the card's probably short of Legacy play, but you put that all together and it's just too much value.
It's a little crazy to think of. Obviously, the fact that it's blue, you can remove it to Force of Will, misdirect some other cards. Looking at the hand, well, info is great, obviously. It's free, sure. It doesn't even have to be free. You can pay 1 if you'd like, and then the fact that it replaces itself, a little cantrip action, which is obviously very powerful in a format like Legacy, where the cards are so powerful.
Yeah, you have less information on your opening hands when you have to mulligan because Gitaxian Probe is going to be replaced with something else, so that's a cost. And in some matchups, your light total is a resource, and so all casting Gitaxian Probes or being forced to spend mana on them are cost there, but otherwise, it's a lot of value.
Both players taking a look at the opening hands. Rill on your left, he'll be on the play. It looks like he's happy. We'll see how the Duke feels about things in just a moment. Looking to the sky again.
A contemplative pose.
What will he do?
A thoughtful human being.
Indeed. Decisions here, as he's going to take a look at that hand one more time before he moves forward.
If Reid wasn't already picturesque enough, him staring off in the sky,
yeah,
mulling over this hand,
it's really good. It's really good.
Can someone carve this into stone, please?
Decisions. He's certainly going to come to one in a moment. He's happy. We are underway. Game number 2. between Rill and Duke. Here's a duress. What were you thinking about? Thoughtseize, Entomb, Careful Study, Entomb, and Underground Sea and a Bloodstained Wire.
Yeah, pretty reasonable for Reid to contemplate a hand like that where it's missing a piece, but you have a cantrip that could potentially find it.
Rill, he's got a decision to make now. He knows he's not up against any counter magic. There's a discard spell. Wonder how scared he is of that. And there's a bunch of other just kind of random stuff. That Careful Study could turn into anything, and Reid's got things to discard because he doesn't need multiple Entombs, given the fact that Rill doesn't have any counter magic.
Yeah, but it does not take very much for this hand from Reid to turn from kind of weird looking into a kill or a lock.
Yeah.
Simply a reanimation spell will allow him to get Iona or Gristlebrand into play. And as we saw in the first game, that's a challenging proposition for Eric to beat.
Careful Study is what Rill is going to take, which means to me, Patrick, he is not scared of being Thoughtseized at all.
Or he's really scared of Careful Study.
Yeah. Well, here's a Thoughtseize. Duke drew a Forcible for the turn. The Grip, Dark Ritual, Lion's Eye Diamond, a Lotus Petal, an Underground Sea, and Scalding Tarn. Both these players kept some Sketchers. I like it.
Yeah, Eric also has a lot of big draws from here, as Infernal Tutor essentially allows him to go off as soon as he can get all the lands out of his hand. So both of these hands that these players kept look a little strange on the surface. They might look like mulligans if you're not that knowledgeable about Legacy, but it takes very little for these hands to become lethal.
Both these players very comfortable with their archetypes as well. So we'll see what Reid wants to take with the Thoughtseize. He will be at 18 from doing this. The big question is, what does he take? And Rill, I mean, as you mentioned, he's got a lot of really good draws moving forward. For each of these players, it only takes really one card to just go from 0 to 60.
Yep.
That's terrifying.
So Reid probably just trying to contemplate what makes Eric's hand the most dangerous. What's the draw he's worried about most? And then in that world, what's the card I want to take? He selects Dark Ritual.
Rill going to draw a card. Going to play an Underground Sea. And if he casts a single spell, okay, you got to be scared if you're Reid right now. There's a Lotus Petal. Dark Confidants playing around Days. A very nice play. That's going to resolve. Over to Duke, we're going to go.
That's an awesome draw here for Eric, as it doesn't look like either player is really that equipped to be doing their thing anytime in the near future. In a slower game, Dark Confidant can easily take over.
Duke draws the Iona for his draw step. Obviously one of the better targets that he can tune for. Now here's a Cabal.
Oh, boy.
A Cabal Ritual for a player who has not one, not two, but a three Entombs in their hand.
Yeah, of course Reid is going to be able to respond with one of them, and he probably doesn't need very much beyond the first one, but that makes him very susceptible to any future graveyard disruption from Eric.
Yeah, he's going to respond right away, casting an Entomb. So Duke is going to go a searching here. Wouldn't be surprised if it's Gristlebrand now, since Iona is in his hand. Quickly does search out the 7/7 Demon, and we'll see what Rill wants to name, because I don't think it's a lot that he has to name Entomb. He just knows that Entomb is there.
Yeah, it's the only card he knows for certain.
Yeah.
Additional copies of Entomb may not matter much for Reid right now, but they do matter in the event that Eric finds some way to interact with Reid's graveyard.
So this will be interesting to see exactly what the Storm player is going to name, because it would be very, very easy for him to say, yeah, name Entomb. But, obviously additional copies, as you mentioned, do have diminishing returns. Now, one thing to keep in mind here as well is that by naming Entomb, it makes, less cards for Reid to put back for the Brainstorm or discard to a Careful Study. So just a little something to keep in mind with the decision-making process here for Eric Rill, as he chose Exhume as the choice. In for 2, we go with Dark Confidant. We'll see if Rill has something else to do this turn.
Yeah, he may not be really worried about additional copies of Entomb at this point, but he does have to concern himself very much, of course, with a reanimation spell being in Reid's hand.
Yeah. And I think he's more than happy with reanimation spell being Reanimate.
Yeah, the life total does matter for Reid as a resource here.
Draw there for the Duke. Looked like it was a Swamp. Nothing crazy rolling off the top of his deck, but you can feel the tension between the two. Either player can draw something completely absurd.
Yeah, both players know there is very little separating them from death right now.
Brainstorm comes rolling off the top for Dark Confidant. Rill will add another card to his hand. Looked like it was a Bloodstained Mire.
But Dark Confidant really well set up for this kind of game. Both players loading up on discard spells, additional counter spells. Once Confidant sneaks into play, that gives you a lot of power to slog through these attrition elements that Reid has brought in.
Brainstorm going to resolve here. Rill going to put 2 cards back. Probably shuffle it with Scalding Tarn to make it a perfect Brainstorm. See what the Storm player is looking for. Again, You can tell just by watching him play his mechanics and everything of that nature, really comfortable playing this deck.
Yeah, the Lotus Petal into the face of a potential daze shows a lot of heads-up play from Eric. A lot of players would like to keep as much of their 0-mana stuff in their hand as possible to add to the storm count the turn they're going to go off, but Eric knew in that spot, if he's actually able to get his Confidant to resolve, he has a lot of tools to work with.
Brainstorm going to resolve. Rill does put the 2 cards back. We'll see if he's going to shuffle now or later, and it will be now. So he's going to go down to 17. Confidant, a card I actually like in the sideboard of this deck a lot. You know, a lot of the times you see people move towards Carpet of Flowers and some other options, but Bobby doing some nice work in this game, obviously.
Yeah, you can anticipate it in a lot of scenarios your opponent's going to be cutting their creature removal, so your Confidant's way more likely to survive in the post-board games. And Carpet of Flowers or cards similar to that are powerful in spots, but they also amplify the power level of your opponent's duresses and thought seizes because they're stripping away maybe your Infernal Tutor or your Burning Wish, whatever your one piece is to go off, and bottleneck or allowing you to have as much mana as you want. So Dark Confidant gives you more resources no matter how your opponent is trying to attack you, assuming that you can get your Confidant to resolve and stay in play.
It's time to brainstorm again, a little bit deeper into the deck. This has got to be scary if you're Reid.
Yeah, Eric's looking at a lot of cards right now.
Yeah. And again, 2 top 8s with Storm for him, 2 wins with Delver strategies, one of which I remember pretty fondly, Grixis Delver beating Ruben Bressler in the finals in Cincinnati. So he is very accomplished here on the Open Series. And again, you do see the 16 to the left of his name, 16th on our leaderboard. Open Series points here for Season 1.
A critical place to land as that gave him 2 buys going into the Invitational.
Yep. So 2 cards are going to go back. Brainstorm is going to resolve. This is a Swamp. That is a Cabal Therapy. We already saw him cast 1 of these this game. This is another one. Don't forget that card does have flashback. There goes Forcible. You see Duke's hand. Iona, Swamp, Entomb, Entomb. In for 2 comes Dark Confidant.
Really rough hand here for Reid, although, again, a reanimation spell or even a Thought Seize allows him to go.
Literally all it takes is 1.
Yeah.
But he does not draw that 1, passes the turn back. Dark Confidant, show me what you're working with. Islands. And these are cards, obviously, he's drawing back from Brainstorm. So setting those and knowing exactly what he was going to find.
And again, it's worth noting, Reid's life total is not a 20 or 0 proposition. Incremental points of damage matter a lot against Reanimator, as Reanimate is asking you to pay a lot of life, and Gristlebrand is as well.
Now, we don't see this a lot from the Storm deck, tapping 5 lands to cast Ad Nauseam, but that's what we're going to see right now. Eric going to turn over a couple of cards. You've got a Dark Ritual, a Gilded Drake, a Lion's Eye Diamond. Reid going to take a look at Gilded Drake. We'll obviously do the same for you guys. Great against Reanimation as a Polluted Delta, a Gitaxian Probe. And see the life total starting to tick down a little bit here for Rill. 13. There's a Misty Rainforest. A Ponder will put him down to 12. Excuse me, down to 11, excuse me.
And this just really speaks to the type of game plan that Eric is able to play once Dark Confidant resolves. He's able to just use discard spells to keep Reid off doing his thing and actually get to a spot now where he can just hard cast Ad Nauseam and have enough mana left over to go off if he finds a Passive Flames or some way to find it.
Gitaxian Probe, Lion's Eye Diamond, and a Cabal Therapy were the last 3. There's an Infernal Tutor. I think that might be all that he needs. So he's not played a land yet this turn, I do not think. He's got the Lotus Petal. We know he has multiple copies of Lion's Eye Diamond there. He also has a Dark Ritual. So he'll take a look at his graveyard. He'll consult everything. Again, a very accomplished Storm player here on our left. He'll figure it out.
Yeah, and for those of you who have never seen Ad Nauseam go off here, what Eric is trying to do is get enough mana generated and an empty hand to use Infernal Tutor to search for Past in Flames or Tendrils of Agony.
Yeah.
So what you can do is you can cast Infernal Tutor, with it on the stack, sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond. When Infernal Tutor resolves, you have no hand, you're hellbent. You can tutor forever you want to, which could be Tendrils if you have enough of a storm count, or Past in Flames if you need additional work.
Eric going to show a bunch of cards here. He's just going to go, you know what? I'm going to cast Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, cast Tendrils. I've got enough spells because I played 3 Lion's Eye Diamond. Those are spells, obviously. Let's not forget about that Ad Nauseam. And the coast is obviously clear from your Invitational card, Gitaxian Probe, and that's going to do it.
And some Confidant beatdowns mixed in there too. Not that he needed that, but
let's not forget about those either. So Eric Rill going to win game number 2. We're even up here between Storm and Reanimator.
And I'm curious to see if Reid maybe goes to a different sideboarding plan now that he knows about Dark Confidant. I don't know if he's going to want any of his anti-creature reanimation effects, either Ashen Rider or Elistorn, but it is noteworthy, again, that Eric has access to this. Usually you see these decks, they're going to something like Carpet of Flowers, as you mentioned, for additional mana, but knowing about Dark Confidant now might change the way that Reid wants to approach the matchup.
Speaking of noteworthy, we saw Duke draw Iona. This is noteworthy for both sides of the table. One, that means that Reid knew what he was up against, I believe, by boarding that in. And in drawing it is a little bit unfortunate. But two, Eric Rill knows that, okay, he's a Reanimator deck that does have Iona, so I can't mess around here because obviously he can't find it every game. But if it's an Entomb, it's probably going to be for Iona. And then it comes back into play and names Black, and that's basically it.
Yeah, that's part of the huge upside of Eric putting a Karakas into his sideboard. Not saying something that you see in every ad nauseum list, but a pretty low opportunity cost card. I mean, it is just a land that you can use for colorless mana. And again, something like Reanimator, if he draws it, it's going to make much harder for Reid to establish the threats that he wants to establish.
So these two fantastic players will be playing game number 3 here in just a little bit. But if you are just joining us on this beautiful Friday here in Charlotte, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, and Osip Lebedovich starts the Games Open series here featuring the Invitational in Charlotte. It's been fun so far.
It has. No,
We've got a
it's
lot
been
of
great
rounds to
magic.
go, but it's been good so far.
Yeah, the invitationals are really fun. You know, there's so many rounds. The quality of play is so high. There's multiple formats to keep things fresh. It's really a great tournament to cover.
Obviously, there are going to be a lot of storylines this weekend. First and foremost, Brian Bronduin leading the Season 1 qualification points race to qualify for our Players' Championship. We can't forget whoever wins this 16-round tournament, 19 in reality with elimination rounds, they're qualified too. So we're punching 2 tickets to Roanoke, Virginia at the end of the year for the Players' Championship. Again, 16 players, $50,000. And then we start Season 2 tomorrow with our Standard Open. We've got our Legacy Open on Sunday. So there's going to be a lot of Magic and a lot of important Magic played.
Yeah, and a large cash purse for the Invitational. This gets lost in the shuffle at times. We're talking about the Players' Championship and $50,000 for 16 players, and obviously it's great to focus on that and give it its due attention, but the Invitational itself is still a very high value proposition, so a lot of money on the line, a lot of critical matches.
We'll turn our attention back here for right now. Round number 4 between Eric Rill and Reid Duke. Reid Duke's resume speaks for itself. I think everybody knows the guy on the right. But Eric Rill, 4 Legacy Open top 8s, 2 wins with 2 different Delver decks, 2 top 8s with Ad Nauseam Tendrils. And again, if you've read his report, Leaving Legacy on the select side of Star City Games, you know that he said, I'm not switching from Storm until I don't make a top 8 with it.
And that's not a bad policy to have.
I agree.
Not a terrible policy.
If you're a very good Storm player, which Rill is, accomplished, experienced, you give yourself a huge leg up on the tournament.
And there's some matchups where it's almost impossible for you to lose, unless something goes disastrously wrong with your draw. And then the matchups where they are actually disrupting you, whether it's with counter spells or their own discard or what have you, having the experience with the deck allows you to power through and know how to navigate through those situations as well.
I generally enjoy that the decks that both you and I prefer in Legacy cannot ever possibly win against
Oh my
Storm.
goodness! Oh my goodness! No, I used to have a shot before Past in Flames.
Sure.
Because if they had to go off with Ad Nauseam, that could be sketchy.
Sure.
But now with Past in Flames, that gives them a very easy way to win the game that they don't have to tax their life total to execute.
Many a time I have cast a Goblin Lackey and have not got to untap with the Goblin Lackey. No hard feelings, of course.
Yeah, there's a great photo of an open top 8 where I have a tapped Goblin Guide and a Mountain on turn 1, revealing a Lion's Eye Diamond on the top of my opponent's deck, and then me not getting to untap.
That'll do it. That is a really good card there at the top of your deck.
Oh boy.
Reid can take a look at his opening hand. He'll be on the play here. Rill, he looks like he's going back down to 6.
And mulligans are really tough for Ad Nauseam. It's one of the toughest parts about the deck because it is about building up a saturation of spells.
Yeah.
It means that the pain of mulligans is amplified, as opposed to a deck like Reid's that really only needs 2 cards to do its thing. Of course, you never want a mulligan, but some decks mulligan better than others, and Ad Nauseam Tendrils is on the lower side of quality mulligans, especially when you know Reid's going to be having access to more duresses and Thoughtseizes to amplify your lack of resources.
Not to mention, it only takes 2 cards to get his best cards in play.
Yes.
Griselbrand and Iona. So Rill doesn't have any time to mess around here as he's going to go down to 6 cards. Got our backup match for you guys. If we do have the chance to move that way, we'll see if we can watch Brian Bronduin play some Magic against Jacob Baugh. And they are in Game 3, I'm being informed. Again, Bronduin playing Miracles, looking for a top 16 finish to solidify his invite to the Players' Championship. Jacob Baugh, Chicago area player. He's playing the old Esper Stoneblade deck. Probably designed by Joe Bernal, one of his playtest partners.
A tired and true legacy strategy.
Always been known to get the job done. So, again, with any luck, we'll be able to move over that way. Rill going to take a look at his opening hand. He looks happy enough. We're underway. Blue to Delta. Duke down to 19.
See what kind of opening here is. Reid would ideally like to lead off with a discard spell, but here it is.
Thoughtseize. Infernal Tutor, Ponder, Dark Ritual, Duress, Cabal Therapy, and a Misty Rainforest. Interesting.
Pretty powerful 6-card hand here for Eric. He has some ability to disrupt Reid with his 2 discard spells, and Dark Ritual, Infernal Tutor, and Ponder could actually allow him to go off fairly quickly.
Got some options.
As far as 6 cards go, this is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, he's got the mana. He can search up an underground, see what that to be able to cast all his spells. He can lead off with a discard spell if he'd like to. Ponder obviously doing some cantripping. Depends on what Duke wants to take. And then Infernal Tutor is kind of the big bullseye. Yeah. That's the one that actually lets him win the game.
I imagine we're going to see Reid take one of the 3 cards on the left here, either Infernal Tutor, Ponder, or Dark Ritual, because Eric has 2 pieces of discard. You can't really fight him on that axis, and all 3 of those cards are very threatening. Mana, selection, or eventually a way to win the game. All things that Reid has to be concerned about.
Well, Reid going to consult his hand. He's looking at a Forceful, and there goes the Manipulator and Ponder, which doesn't really surprise me too much.
Yeah.
I think that's the most powerful card in Rill's hand, as he has the Scalding Tarn to the grip. Going to sacrifice the Misty Rainforest that Duke does know about, so 19 to 17 right now.
And you can see in these post-board games how powerful Dark Confidant is as a tool, as both players are trying to go after each other's hands as their primary form of interaction. The game's going to slow down. It's going to be a little more attrition-oriented. Players are not going to be able to kill each other as quickly, and in those sorts of games, Dark Confidant is at its best.
So we'll see if Rill's going to fire off a discard spell and which one it'll be. It'll be Duress to start things off with. Will Duke fight, or is he okay with this? He is going to Daze. That, pass the turn back.
Reid's choice with Thoughtseize and this Daze implies a really powerful hand.
It's scary, right?
Yeah. These are the lines of someone who thinks they have it set up and ready to go.
It also forces Rill's hand on naming correctly with Cabal Therapy, given the context of his hand.
Yeah, that's another incentive to counter the Duress here.
Well, that'll make it easy.
Mm-hmm.
This is insert blab about Cataxin Pro. 2 Gristle's Brands, an Exhume, a Forceful, and a Swap, I believe, is the Duke's grip.
Well, you look at that.
That makes Cabal Therapy a lot easier.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Reid has a card off screen there or not, but you do see the 5 cards. Yep. Therapy. Well, let's let him draw a card with Probe first, since it's so good. Therapy probably firing off an Exhume this turn.
Well, it's certainly not Gristlebrand.
I can promise you that. That's just insightful analysis. Yeah. I appreciate that.
That seems like the wrong card to take there.
There goes the Exhume. Reid without a blue card for Force of Will.
But it's really, as bad as this looks, it's really important for Eric to capitalize quickly, as, again, does not take much for Reid to get something awesome into play.
That's right. One careful study comes rolling off the top. We probably got a brand new game here. Looks like Duke drew a Reanimate for the turn. He's just going to pass the turn back. Rill going to draw now. See what he's got to do on his turn.
And this would be a great spot for Dark Confidant.
Inclined to agree, my friend. Also be a great spot to just go off and kill him.
Yeah.
But you know, just going to pass the turn back. Iona drawn again for Reid. 2 games in a row. Looks like Rill picked up a Brainstorm. He did. Hard to say if there's ever a bad spot for a Brainstorm. 1, 2, and 3 for Rill.
And you can see Reid not playing the Swamp in his hand. The reason is that he doesn't need to get to 3 mana, and he may be trying to discard to hand size. That might be his path to reanimate right now.
Got to leave himself some options, that's for sure.
Yeah. Because again, no 3 mana spells, and he doesn't have a 3rd land in his hand anyway. He may have Show and Tell, but he couldn't cast it if he played the Swamp. And it is possible that the game could get to a point where he discards an Iona or Gristlebrand and just reanimates it that way. So that's a decision that I think a lot of players would just instinctively play their 2nd land, but Reid recognizes that this might be a way to get one of his large creatures into the graveyard.
It's not ideal, but given that's what he's working with, gotta do what you gotta do, you know?
Yeah. Of course, he does have to be worried about the amount of time that he's giving Eric right now, as, you know, he knows that there's a Dark Ritual. He knows that there's an Infernal Tutor. some of the pieces are already there for Eric to be able to go off pretty quickly. And now he's brainstorming. He's, looking at more cards. He might be able to set this up pretty fast.
Rill contemplating what 2 cards to put back. And does resolve Brainstorm now. Let's see if he's going to make it a perfect one by fetching right now.
Well, if you're Reid, you're really worried if he doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. I think looking at Rill's hand, you see a Dark Ritual. I think there are 2 copies of Infernal Tutor over there. Looks like 2 Lotus Petals as well.
Yeah.
It looks like to me that maybe the engines are ready to go. The question is Rill ready to go? Because he knows about Force of Will. The thing he doesn't know about is that if Reid has a blue card or not, is Duke is going to draw a card for the turn.
Yeah, and there's some risk in doing all this kind of stuff incrementally, I think Eric may ideally want to do something like Infernal Tutor, reveal a Dark Ritual in his hand, go into the Dark Ritual, and then go for sure the following turn.
Yeah.
But there's some risk against Reid's discard about setting up that line, and there's also just the risk of Reid killing him. So a lot of variables that Eric's working through.
Duke taking a look at Rill's graveyard right now. Also taking a look at his as well. No creature down there yet, Reid. Not quite sure what he picked up for this turn, but you can take a look at his hand. He's going to play a Swamp. Doesn't look like he's drawn any blue cards just yet for that Force of Will.
I think we might be looking at a Thoughtseize targeting Reid.
That's exactly what we're looking at. He says, this way, please. Shows the grip. Iona, it's time for you to go to the graveyard. And now he's going to cast Reanimate, targeting it.
Eric rather does have 2 copies of Surgical Extraction in his sideboard, but I do not believe he has it.
Iona's in play. We'll get confirmation on what it's naming, but I believe, Patrick, it's probably black, and it is. Skull and Tarn, now's a good time to sacrifice that as Duke is down to a lowly 6 life.
Yeah, again, Reid aware of the fact that there was an Infernal Tutor and a Dark Ritual in Eric's hand off of Reid's first turn Thoughtseize, so naming black a pretty safe choice.
You see, Rill's going to take a look at Iona. We're going to do the same here for you guys, obviously. The big flyer, what does it do? It says cards of a color cannot be cast of Reid's chosen. But Reid can cast those cards, just
Yes.
Rill cannot. It's not symmetrical. So your opponents can't cast spells of the chosen color. Black is the choice, which is the base of Rill's deck here. Now, he does have outs to this situation. That Caracas that you mentioned in the sideboard, be a good time to draw that.
Yep. Really good spot for Caracas.
Take a draw, Mr. Rill. And he has nothing. He passes the turn back over to Duke. Duke quickly untaps. He takes a draw. In for 7 we go. Rill going to go down to 9. Duke puts puts Marsh Flats directly into play. Rill draws a card. Has to pass the turn back yet again. Duke will quickly draw. He's coming across for 7 more. Rill's going to go down to 2.
There is an Echoing Truth in Eric's sideboard, too.
And that is going to do it. Iona gets the job done. Reid Duke wins this match 2-1, moves on to 3-1. Reanimator defeats Ad Nauseam Tendrils.
And you can see there Reanimator's edge in the combo matchup. Getting something like Iona into play potentially very fast. Wasn't very fast that game as he had to slog through some discard spells and such, but Iona is so powerful against a deck like Ad Nauseam Tendrils.
Certainly good enough to get the job done there, even though Duke drew it both games. Thoughtseize does have a little bit of versatility. You don't think about targeting yourself very often with that card, but in Reanimator, it's something that comes up quite a bit. Able to reanimate Iona and get the job done. So congratulations to Reid Duke, number 12 on our Open Series leaderboard. Moving on to 3-1 and Standard soon.
Yeah, and thoughts